My Lords, I hope to be able to persuade the noble Lord Robertson, who knows I have enormous respect for him, that the safeguards are not good enough and that he should reconsider before we get to a vote on this motion. The noble Lord Forsyth, at the end of his remarks, commented about Fraser Nelson's article this morning. It's a long article, but I just would like to read to the House one or two sentences from it. But the Emiratis and others, he says, are using their state investment vehicles as levers of political power. That is the democratic threat. It's one that Parliament has protected us from, but that protection is now compromised. That's why we're here today, my Lords. None of us, I think, speaking in this debate, want eagerly to support a fatal motion. I, along with the noble Lord Forsyth and others, have not supported on any kind of regular basis fatal motions in the past. But this is an extraordinary regulation that we're being asked to approve, and these are extraordinary times. So I agree with the noble Lord Forsyth and the noble Lord Fox, the noble Lord Clement Jones, and others who have expressed opinions outside your Lordship's chamber, including Baroness Kennedy of the Shores and Lord Blencathra, and who have also arrived at the same conclusion, albeit reluctantly. One of those others, my Lords, is the former leader of the Conservative Party, Sir Ian Duncan Smith. And for the record, I remind the House that Sir Ian and I, along with 5 other parliamentarians, including Baroness Kennedy of the Shores, have been sanctioned by the Chinese Communist Party regime. And as the noble Lord Forsyth suggested in a sort of curtain raiser at the end of his remarks, that's the point I want to talk about today in my remarks, about the influence that they are seeking to exert in this country and beyond. Let's be clear, my Lords, these regulations fundamentally contradict the intentions of Parliament expressed just months ago, as we've heard, in the Digital Markets Competition and Consumer Act. That act was, as Lord Forsyth has reminded us, underpinned by overwhelming cross-party consensus. Foreign governments must not own or influence our press. Influence, therefore, as Fraser Nelson points out, is the issue here. Influence. Yet these draft regulations, hastily brought forward, would allow precisely that. Now, I agree with the noble Baroness, Lady Stoll, and we've been able to have conversations outside the House, and I was grateful to her for that. I agree with her that the defects should have been ironed out beforehand, and we should not be asked to agree these regulations today in the expectation that there will be amendments in the autumn. And I agree with what the noble Lord Fox said about the importance of new primary legislation. That's how the House should do it, not through these unamendable orders, as we've been reminded. As we've heard, we're being asked to agree something that permits multiple foreign state investors to acquire up to 15% of a UK newspaper without, as it stands, cumulative limits, a defect in these regulations which won't be addressed until the autumn. That's not a safeguard, but a revolving door through which foreign interests may again reach into the heart of our democratic discourse. And for what? To facilitate one single deal. The timing is no coincidence. We're being asked to rewrite press freedom protections, not for principle, but for expediency. And as I discussed with the noble Baroness Lady Twycross, when she kindly invited me to meet her last Thursday, she says she cannot comment on who are the sources of the funding. She can't comment on whether Redbird's bid is fully funded and ready to go. She's unable to comment, my Lords, so much therefore for the transparency to which we are entitled to have before coming to a conclusion on these issues. The proposed acquisition of the Telegraph Media Group by Redbird Capital Partners is not merely, and I would say this gently to the noble Lord Black of Brentford, it's not merely a commercial transaction. It is a matter of national interest and indeed of democratic integrity. Be clear, the chairman of Redbird, John Thornton, is a board member of Chinese state-backed companies, including Lenovo and the China Investment Corporation. He's openly advocated for China to, his words, get into English language media. And by the way, my Lords, he's received the PRC's highest honour for foreigners from a regime accused by the House of Commons of genocide in Xinjiang, and which has incarcerated over 1,000 pro-democracy advocates in Hong Kong, including Jimmy Lai, the British national who has been such a champion of media freedom and paid such a price for it. Let us not forget The CCP has long understood that controlling the narrative is as vital as controlling the army. Xiao Qi-Quing, a senior Chinese official, put it bluntly, his words, "We need to try to dominate the overseas media. Our goal is to have the overseas media follow our steps." According to the Centre for European Policy Analysis, China spends up to $10 billion annually on international propaganda. That's not soft power, my lords. It's sharp power designed to erode trust, manipulate information, and bend foreign societies towards the CCP's interests. So I ask the House, with all we now know about the PRC's global ambitions and influence operations, are we really prepared to allow a known intermediary of Beijing, a man described by Chinese state media as, I quote, a modern-day Kissinger, to acquire a seat at the table of one of Britain's most influential newspapers? To allow that would be the abdication of our duty to Parliament, to democracy and to the people we serve. The government argues that further regulations will come in the autumn to address this cumulative problem. But this raises the obvious question: if the regulations are defective now, and they are, why not fix them now? On Thursday, I asked the Minister to withdraw them and to do just that. Why rush them through with full knowledge of their flaws? My Lords, I wish briefly to also use this opportunity to make a formal representation to the Government. Under the Enterprise Act 2002, as amended by the DMCC Act of 2024, the Secretary of State has a legal duty, not a discretion, to issue a foreign state intervention notice if there are reasonable grounds to suspect a foreign power may gain influence over a UK newspaper. Given the extensive ties between Redbird Capital Partners and the Chinese state, including Mr. Thornton's affiliations with PRC institutions and co-investments, even with Chinese military-linked firms, there is clear evidence meeting the statutory threshold. Under Schedule 6B, even indirect influence or the ability to shape policy may suffice. Parliament's intention in passing the DMCC Act was precisely to prevent this. Therefore, the Secretary of State is bound by law to investigate and cannot lawfully ignore the risk of the PRC-linked influence over the Telegraph Media Group. This position is supported by a legal opinion from Tom Cross KC, which I know the Minister has seen, and I would ask her to confirm whether that opinion will be formally considered and whether the Secretary of State will now act. My Lords, democracy dies not in thunder, but in whispers. It dies when we look the other way, when we convince ourselves that 15% here and 15% there means nothing. It dies when influence becomes indistinguishable from ownership, and when we abandon the courage to act in defence of a free press. Let's remember the words of Lord Forsyth during the passage of that Digital Markets Bill. He said there should be a complete ban on any foreign government having either ownership or influence over our press. I agreed with him then, and I agree with him now. That was the will of Parliament. Let's not allow it to be undone by stealth. So I commend the noble Lord, Lord Fox, for his clarity and conviction. This is the time to act, and I support his motion.